Hello, today is Wednesday, July 18th, 2018, and this is the kubeadm Sync Cluster Lifecycle kubeadm office hours. Currently, our agenda is pretty light, so if you have things to discuss, please add them to the agenda. Fabrizio has one topic that I know that Lucas asked us to talk about, and it's basically the promotion of the configuration to V1 Beta 1. I have initially looked through it a long time ago. I have not re-looked through it recently because I've been working on sporadic set of other things, along with a lot of reviews for the initial transitions of the configuration stuff. Do folks want to discuss it here? Or are there things to discuss?
Perhaps Fabrizio should talk about it.
Yep.
Yes, so the work about API is already, Lucas is pushing a lot on this work and is really doing a good job, and we already have in place at least one big step of the API change, which is to have a different or a lazy dependency with the component config. And now component config are not anymore part of the public API of kubeadmin, but they are they should be passed as a separate document. And this is already merged as PR. Now Luca is working in the second big step, which is to split the cluster configuration from the init configuration. So we will have a clean kubeadmin config map that doesn't have tokens or everything. It is temporary or linked to the join action. And then there is the third part of the API change that for me requires, from my point of view, require a little bit of contribution from people in the SIG. That is to shuffle all the attributes that we have around and reorganize in a better way. Some actions are already well defined. For instance, having a substructure for each control plane component. Some other details should be better defined. For instance, how or if and how are we changing how we manage images. Now there is an approach which is kind of articulated where we have to set up the image repository or unified control plane image, and this for the control plane components, while for the etcd we can set the image directly. So the question is if and how are we going to simplify this or to harmonize this. And in the CAP there is a brief discussion of these topics. You can find a brief discussion on all the topics, and in the final part of the CAP there is the last proposal of the new API that Lucas Lucas and me in some, and also some other folks in some session of pair programming prepared, but from my point of view, it is necessary still some refinements. So any contribution will be more than help.
Liz, I know I pointed you at this. Have you had a chance to look through it in detail?
I gave it a first read through yesterday, and today I was planning on going through and marking it up. Fabrizio, would you prefer comments on the Google Doc, or do you want to get this up as a KEP PR and do it that way?
I think that it will be easier to have a first.
You're breaking up a little bit, Fabrizio. Could you say that again?
Round of text in the Google document to shuffle things. If it is, could you hear me now?
I can only just hear you now. Try
could
that
you hear
again.
me?
Yeah, we're good now.
I think Beautiful Minds, that wanted you to put
in the Google document.
Yes, he wants you to put it in the Google document.
Google document it is.
I'll try to take a pass through today too. I have a tab open for two. That was one of the items I have on my list to take a look at. So. There's a meta topic that kind of relates to some of this, but there's not a lot of overlap, but it will relate to some of your HA work. The big thing that I wanted to do was remove self-hosting code before you started to implement or get your PRs in place, Fabrizio, for HA work. Do you have thoughts around that?
I think that we can do in either order. So we can do HA before or after removing self-hosting. Now I have a draft PR that basically blocks the user if it is doing HA with a self-hosted cluster. So I blocks. So it's not a problem. I'm only waiting to send the PR because the PR depends of the availability of a kubeadm configuration where I can track all the information about many masters. Everything else is already ready to be pushed.
So it's generally P0, we need to get as many eyeballs onto the configuration changes as quickly as we can, so that way we unblock the rest of the efforts.
Yes, the critical point is that the PR Lucas is working on is kind of blocking because he's splitting the init configuration from the cluster configuration. And until we have this in place, it is also difficult to work in parallel. And and to move on quickly. So I'm helping Lucas from remote, but as you know, it is not always a.
Yep, I will take a look. I will add it to my queue today to try and get a burn through the configuration changes, and maybe Liz and I can sync together and talk about it this afternoon to make sure we're on the same page.
If you want, later today, I can be available for some session or review on the document so I can explain the point or the idea that was behind the changes.
That sounds good. We'll see where I'm at. I have a couple things to finish off, but it'll probably be later in the afternoon, so I don't exactly know what time that will be for you, Fabrizio.
But it will be fine later when the kids are at bed. It will be a good time for me. So around here now it's 6 p.m. I think that around 10 p.m. is a good time for me. I don't know what time is it for you, if it sounds good or not. So in 4 hours time.
That should be.
Yeah, I'm pretty much wide open this afternoon.
Okay, that should work for me.
Okay.
Are there other topics to discuss today? I know that Lee had mentioned he wanted to join, but I thought yesterday's conversation with regards to testing was pretty closed for the time being. I did follow up. I am going to follow up with SIG testing, especially what Ben is trying to do with regards to DIN testing, because I think that would be highly beneficial to everyone. If we can get like a PR blocking DIN tester for kubeadm, that would be super duper.
Are you saying bin tester?
DIND.
Din.
Docker and
Oh, yeah, Docker. Cool. Yeah, that would be super.
Yep. Because that way we get PR blocking jobs on kubeadm deploys of some sort, right? So that at least just gets us first pass signal. I was going to sign up the SIG mailing list today for the spam bot failure. So if it becomes too much noise, please let me know and I'll try to turn down the gain on that one because there are parameters to tweak that. But that's the only other updates I can think of at this point. Lubomir or other folks, do you have other updates you want to discuss?
I wanted to say that I created a Google document for the SIG charter. I don't know when the deadline is for that, but everyone can contribute anything in there.
I may take a pass to that today because I have that. That is also my to-do list. I have to review charters.
So when is the deadline for that, by the way?
I don't know if there is a hard deadline. So I think if we get something up there, initial PR within the next week or so, steering committee is backlogged. The problem with steering committee currently is that we have a lot of the people who started the project who also have a million other responsibilities. So getting the time to actually review all the charters is a problem.
Yeah, in terms of the content of the charter, there are some things that I simply don't understand. So, like more experienced people taking a look will be appreciated.
Yeah, I'll take a look at it because I've had to go through and review a bunch of charters already. So.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any other group topics?
Well, we had this failure with the images last night.
It's not under our control. This is the SIG release button.
Yeah, this has to be streamlined, eventually automated, so that, I mean, the images have to go before the release, because I got like 20 people or something like that with the issue report.
Yeah.
I would take that to SIG release channel, and they want to. I know that Tim Pepper is trying to make changes to allow this to be better. So definitely file that with them because they're pretty much the owners of the release repository. But only a Googler can push to the GCS buckets, so it's still in their boat. We can't, as a SIG, we don't control that apparatus.
Yeah, I spoke to him personally like today, and he said that he's going to try to improve this later. At least for this to be ready for 1.12, I guess.
The major releases are usually cut with a lot of more buy-in from the SIGs to make sure that everything is done. The minor releases are kind of done asynchronously from the SIGs. So, it's not, there isn't person that's double checking everything before it all goes out the door. So I'm less concerned about the major releases as I am about the minor release updates. So I think talking with Foxish on SIG release as well as Tim Pepper is important.
Yeah, so maybe Chuck can comment on that about our usage of we're using stable 1.11 instead of the matching the version that is currently the kubeadm version. Chuck, do you know what's like the logic behind that?
I don't know the logic behind why we do that. I think the reason that my guess is that we want to set it with the defaults and not use the dynamic defaults to pick the version, but I'm not really sure if that is a good reason to not try to pick a better version of images.
There's a lot of
idea
weird
behind
history.
is what to take the latest table from a branch what user is selecting, because if user will be using, like, let's say kubeadm 11.0, he will be stuck on 11.0, and we know what minor releases usually like fixes the bugs.
I guess the point here is that is there a possibility for a breakage if the user is using 1.11 kubeadm and pulls images which are like patch release 5 or something? And is there a possibility for a breakage here?
There is a possibility to, well, there is a possibility for a breakage if there's a kubeadm bug. And that kubeadm bug isn't fixed. But part of the upgrade instructions are step 1, yum update your packages. Step 2, then pull the images. So I mean, like, it's documented to do the right thing. Whether or not users do the right thing is, another story.
So in that case, wouldn't the bug be, in general, wouldn't the bug be specific to kubeadm and not the images that we're pulling, though? That would be a bug that would exist for that release of kubeadm, and the way that it's deploying components, it shouldn't have any impact on the actual deployed components.
Yeah, so basically we are fine, like using stable 111 because the control plane is supposed to work with these patch releases anyhow.
Yes.
I guess the problem here is like this way we depend on, with the current release machinery, we depend on people from Google to push the button, and yeah, that hopefully we're gonna not see this breakage for the next patch release.
Yeah. So I just wanted to, in this whole conversation and the conversation from yesterday, I had another thought, which is, do we want to, since we know that we want to change the CI jobs and things like that, add a DIND job and things like that. So is this the right time to actually consider moving our code into a separate repository as well? Jason and I were talking on another one, and we were talking about something else. And I raised the point again about kubeadm being part of the main Kubernetes repository. So is it time to start from scratch, move the things out, build the CI jobs that we want, and get to the point where we have more control over things that we want?
The problem is that's slightly orthogonal to the actual problem statement. Even if we were to asynchronous release, we depend upon packages such as kubelet, right? So like we need the kubelet package along with kubeadm, and they need to be in lockstep synchronization. So I don't see it as being beneficial at this stage. And again, there's a bunch, we can't really asynchronously release kubeadm just because of how the vetting process works. I would prefer to get the CI jobs in place first, and then to slowly do the decoupling, then to decouple and then deal with other problems that would come along with this.
Yeah, knowing what I know about the test and fry, it might be easier to start simple and add stuff than build the CI jobs based on the fact that both are in the same repository, and then try to decouple. I mean, that's why the suggestion.
I don't see it as a priority right now. It's conflating the problem set. Like I don't see it as being a problem per se right now. The biggest problem is that the build artifacts are in one repo, and the actual testing for most of the other stuff is in another repo. If we actually just built and tested from one single repository, and we use Bazel for everything, that would solve 90% of these problems. And I would, I've been wanting that for, what's the date? What year is it?
I mean, we are sending a clear signal to everybody that, okay, we are starting from scratch. This is the new repository. This is how we are going to do stuff. And, that's basically why the thought came about. For another example, what Jason and I were talking from yesterday was in the cluster API stuff, we needed things that are in kubeadm. For example, we were talking about the configuration, validating the configuration before we pass things on to kubeadm, for example, right? And then we were talking about, are there going to be multiple versions of these things, and where do we vendor it from? So that's how we got into that rabbit hole.
Yeah,
Jason,
that is
sorry.
That is a consumer, that bit of consumption of kubeadm for multiple projects, that definitely needs to be pushed slightly, very slowly into staging. Because there are multiple people who want to consume the config, especially as the config gets matures, because that will be the dependent object that people will use for vendoring and using kubeadm itself.
Right. That's how that whole conversation started. Jason, did you have anything to add there?
Not really, but I think in my mind, I think that's we don't even want to try to address breaking it out of repo at this point, especially with the amount of work that we have ongoing with the current cycle, with trying to stabilize the config. I think once things settle down a bit, then we'll have a bit more kind of cycles to be able to try to take on something like that.
I agree, 10,000%.
So for 112, what is the minimum that we would like to see in terms of a CI job? We are talking about a new CI job, DIND, single node, E2E test, conformance tests, right?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay. Anything more is a plus.
Yeah, anything more is, well, I want to get the signal fed to the SIG so that the periodic jobs do have some type of signal going on.
Right, that's easier. I mean, that we already have infrastructure. It's just that we need the new CI job.
There's another conundrum that bothers me that it relates to test automation, which I need to talk with Signode about too as well, is that there is no CRI test automation for these other things. And we are like literally the focal point of the universe, like a laser beam for all the CRI deployment configurations. So like they kind of said, yay, CRI is great, use containerd and cryo, but no one actually did PRs on our side to validate and set up test automation. So that way, these things work from soup to nuts, all the way from when you want to configure the deployment all the way through to actually using it. So that has been a source of frustration.
So then a stretch goal would be CRIO, or pick one and be the variant of the first job that we talked about.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
Lee, you came late to the party. We're done.
Oh. Yeah, sorry, my schedule's just been a lot busier lately.
Are there other group topics?
So Robert was asking yesterday if someone wants to present about kubeadm in Shanghai. So Alexander, you said that you can go to Shanghai. Is that true?
Well, at least it's a plan. For us, we're planning for travels and company started. So I submitted request, and if it will be a chance to speak, when it will be bigger chances to get the travel approved.
Yeah, if you can go, I basically sent an email, and I'm not sure you saw it, to some people from China, the contributors, but it will be best if you lead any talks, because they are less experienced than you.
Yeah, that should be possible.
Okay, so you can talk to Robert about this if you are going.
Okay.
I don't have anything else.
Last call for topics. Wait, once? Twice?
Is Fabrizio on, I guess?
He is.
I just probably gonna send in a quick patch to the kubeadm development repo to update the requirements list for the playground, because like older versions of Ansible are basically incompatible with our current setup. So.
I have also nearly finished a version without Ansible. We can discuss offline how to bring them in the Kubernetes repo.
Okay. Thanks.
Right, anything else? Round two. Going once, twice, 3 times. Okay, we'll call it. Thanks, everybody.